Let me be upfront with you. One of the hardest truths we'll ever face in life is that nothing lasts forever. Things we hold close, the people we love, even the very moments that make us smile, all of it is fleeting. At first, that might sound terrifying, right? But let me tell you something from the heart. Understanding and accepting this truth has been one of the most liberating lessons in my life. There was a time when I couldn't handle the thought of losing anything, whether it was a relationship, a job, or even a version of myself I thought defined me. I clung to things as if my life depended on them, and every time something slipped away, it felt like a piece of me disappeared with it. It was exhausting, and honestly, it left me feeling powerless. But then I started to see things differently. I realized that trying to stop change is like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it escapes. What if, instead of fearing loss, we saw it as a natural part of life? What if we could use it, even embrace it, to live more fully and freely? Here's the truth. Loss is going to happen. Life will shift and move in ways you don't expect, and you can't always control it. But you can control how you respond. And when you shift your perspective, something magical happens. You stop seeing change as an enemy and start seeing it as a teacher. I've learned that every ending holds a beginning, even if it's hard to see at first. When you lose something, whether it's a person, an opportunity, or even just a sense of certainty, you're given a chance to grow. I know that sounds cliché, but think about it. The moments in your life that have shaped you the most probably weren't the easy ones. They were the ones that tested you, forced you to adapt, and showed you how strong you really are. Let's take a moment to acknowledge how resilient you already are. Think about all the things you've overcome to get to this point. You've survived days you thought you wouldn't. You've rebuilt after things fell apart. That's not just luck, that's you showing up for yourself, even when it was hard. The question isn't whether loss will come, it will. The real question is how you'll face it. Will you let it break you, or will you let it shape you into someone even stronger? The choice is yours, and I'm here to tell you that you're more capable than you think. This isn't about ignoring the pain or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about learning to flow with life, not fight against it. Change is inevitable, but suffering doesn't have to be. When you learn to accept that everything passes, you discover a freedom that no one can take away. And trust me, that freedom feels incredible. When I first started thinking deeply about why change is so hard for us, I realized it wasn't just the act of losing something that made it painful. It was the stories we attach to what we're losing, the fear of being left empty, the idea that we'll never find something as good again, or the belief that we're somehow less without it. I've felt that weight too, the tight grip of holding on to something that I knew was already slipping away, like sand running through my fingers. The more I tried to hold on, the heavier it felt. But then I came across this simple yet profound truth. Everything we experience is temporary. It's not just relationships or material possessions, it's the emotions we feel, the situations we face, even the very thoughts running through our minds. And while that can sound harsh at first, I started to see it as a doorway to freedom. I want to share with you how understanding impermanence has completely reshaped the way I view life, and why it holds the key to unlocking a life of peace, resilience, and meaning. One of the things that helped me the most was understanding how the Stoics viewed impermanence. They didn't see it as a reason to despair. They saw it as the natural rhythm of life. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, reminded us to reflect often on how swiftly things pass and are gone. When I first read that, it hit me like a lightning bolt. It wasn't a call to sadness, but a reminder to stay grounded in what truly matters. The idea is simple but profound. When we accept that everything is fleeting, we stop clinging so tightly. And when we stop clinging, we create space. Space to appreciate what we have while we have it, and space to let go when the time comes. There's a strange kind of relief in realizing that nothing we hold on to is permanent, not even our pain. Think about it. How often have you felt like a bad day or a difficult season would last forever? But here you are, standing on the other side of it. Even the heaviest storms eventually pass. That's the beauty of impermanence. It's a reminder that whatever you're facing right now, it's temporary. And just like the tough times don't last, neither do the moments of joy. That's not a reason to feel sad, it's a reason to savor them. When I started seeing life through this lens, I noticed a shift in how I approached everything. The small frustrations that used to eat at me started to feel insignificant. The fear of losing something or someone became less paralyzing. It wasn't because I stopped caring. It was because I started to care in a different way. I began to value things for what they were, rather than for how long I thought I could keep them. This shift in perspective also taught me something powerful about fear. Most of the fear we experience isn't about what's happening right now. It's about what might happen in the future. We fear losing what we love, or we fear that change will bring something worse. But when we understand that everything in life is temporary, we realize that there's no sense in wasting energy on these fears. They don't stop change from happening. They only make the experience more painful. Let me share an example from my own life. There was a time when I was deeply attached to a job I thought defined me. It felt like everything I had worked for, and the thought of losing it was terrifying. I poured all my energy into trying to control every outcome, staying late, saying yes to everything, and constantly trying to prove my worth. But then, despite all my efforts, things shifted, and I had to walk away from that role. At first, it felt like the end of the world. But as time passed, I realized something. Losing that job didn't take away who I was. It opened doors I couldn't have seen before. The Stoics teach us that impermanence isn't something to fight, it's something to flow with. When we resist it, we suffer. When we embrace it, we find freedom. That doesn't mean we don't feel pain when we lose something. It means we don't let the pain define us. It's about recognizing that every loss, every change, is part of the natural rhythm of life. This perspective also reshaped how I view relationships. I used to fear the idea of losing people, whether through conflict, distance, or even death. But I've come to see that the impermanence of relationships is what makes them so precious. Knowing that time with someone is limited has made me more present, more grateful, and more intentional. Instead of worrying about how long a connection will last, I focus on the quality of the moments we share. Understanding impermanence doesn't mean you stop caring. On the contrary, it means you care more deeply, but with a light touch. You hold things close to your heart without gripping them too tightly. You learn to appreciate the beauty of each moment, knowing it won't last forever, and that's precisely what makes it beautiful. I want you to think about this. What would change in your life if you truly embraced the idea that nothing lasts forever? Would you hold on to grudges, or would you let them go, knowing that even conflict is fleeting? Would you stress about the little things, or would you focus on what really matters? When you understand impermanence, you realize that so much of what we get caught up in is just noise. This doesn't mean life becomes easy, but it does become lighter. You stop carrying unnecessary burdens, and you start walking through life with a sense of peace. You realize that you don't have to control everything. You just have to show up, fully present, and let life unfold. This is what impermanence has taught me, that every moment, every experience, every loss is part of a greater flow. And when you stop resisting that flow, you find a freedom that nothing and no one can take away. When we fully grasp the idea that nothing lasts forever, it shifts how we see loss. Instead of focusing on what's slipping away, we start to see the possibilities it creates. It doesn't make the pain disappear, but it reframes the experience. Loss stops being the end of the story and becomes the beginning of a new chapter. I've found that some of my greatest periods of growth came from moments when I was forced to let go. It's not easy, far from it, but there's a quiet strength that emerges when you realize you can rebuild. Loss has a way of breaking us open, exposing parts of ourselves we didn't even know existed. At first, it feels raw and overwhelming, like a wound that won't heal. But it's in this rawness that we have the chance to rebuild, not as we were before, but stronger and more resilient. I've learned that every time I faced loss, whether it was a relationship, a job, or even a dream, it left behind lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. It taught me to adapt, to find strength in uncertainty, and to trust that I could handle whatever came next. One of the hardest lessons for me was accepting that loss is a natural part of life. I resisted it for a long time, trying to avoid it at all costs. But the truth is, loss is unavoidable. The more we fight against it, the more it consumes us. It's only when we stop resisting and start working with it that we begin to grow. I've seen this in my own life and in the lives of others. The people who thrive aren't the ones who avoid loss, but the ones who embrace it as a teacher. When we face loss, it's easy to focus on what's been taken from us. But there's another way to look at it. Loss also clears space. It makes room for new opportunities, new connections, and new versions of ourselves. I know it's hard to see that in the moment. When you're in the middle of it, all you feel is what's missing. But looking back, I can see how every loss I've experienced has created space for something else to grow. It doesn't mean the pain wasn't real. It means it wasn't the whole story. One of the most powerful tools I've found for transforming loss into strength is reflection. When I take the time to sit with my emotions and really look at what I've lost, I start to see patterns. I see what I held on to too tightly, what I might have outgrown, or what was no longer serving me. It's not about blaming yourself or anyone else. It's about understanding the role that loss plays in shaping who you are. Another thing that's helped me is focusing on what I can control. Loss often leaves us feeling powerless, as if the ground has been pulled out from under us. But when I shift my focus to what I can do, whether it's taking small steps to rebuild or simply choosing how I respond to the situation, I start to feel that power coming back. It's not about fixing everything all at once. It's about finding one small thing you can hold on to and building from there. I also want to talk about the importance of resilience. Resilience isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, piece by piece, every time you face adversity. Every time you get back up after a setback, you're strengthening that muscle. I've found that resilience doesn't mean you don't feel the pain. It means you don't let the pain define you. It's about recognizing that while loss changes you, it doesn't have to destroy you. Loss also has a way of teaching us what truly matters. When something is taken away, it forces us to reevaluate our priorities. I've seen this in my own life. When I lost things I thought I couldn't live without, I realized how much energy I had been putting into things that didn't truly align with my values. Loss has a way of stripping away the unnecessary, leaving behind what's essential. It's a painful process, but it's also clarifying. I've also learned the importance of asking for help during times of loss. There's a tendency to want to go through it alone, to feel like you have to carry the burden yourself. But the truth is, we're not meant to do this alone. Reaching out to someone you trust, whether it's a friend, a family member, or even a professional, can make all the difference. It doesn't make the pain disappear, but it reminds you that you're not alone in it. One of the most surprising things I've discovered is that loss often brings unexpected gifts. They're not always obvious at first, and they don't erase the pain, but they're there if you look for them. Maybe it's a newfound sense of strength, a deeper appreciation for what you still have, or a lesson you carry with you into the future. These gifts don't take away from what you've lost, but they add to who you are. I want to leave you with this. Loss isn't the end. It feels like it in the moment, and it's okay to sit with that feeling, but know that there's more to come. There's growth waiting on the other side, even if it's hard to see right now. You're stronger than you think, and every time you face loss, you have the opportunity to prove that to yourself. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Every time I think about how loss has shaped me, one thing becomes crystal clear. It's not just the big life lessons that help us grow, but the small, intentional practices we bring into our daily lives. Loss teaches us a lot, but the real power comes when we start living with that awareness every day. The key isn't to wait until life forces change upon you, but to build habits and mindsets that prepare you for it. This is where Stoic practices truly shine. They're not abstract ideas. They're tools you can use to ground yourself, no matter what's happening around you. When I first started applying Stoic techniques, it felt like opening a new door. Suddenly, I had a way to approach life that wasn't about resisting change, but embracing it. I found that these practices didn't just help me deal with loss. They transformed how I experienced life as a whole. They gave me clarity, gratitude, and a kind of inner calm I didn't know was possible. One practice that's profoundly changed my perspective is the view from above. This is more than just a thought exercise. It's a way of shifting your entire outlook. The idea is simple. Picture yourself as if you were looking at your life from a great height, like standing on a mountain or floating above the earth. When I do this, I see how small my daily worries truly are. The arguments, the disappointments, the things I obsess over. When you step back and see the bigger picture, they lose their grip on you. What this practice has taught me is that perspective is everything. When you look at your life as part of a vast, ever-changing world, it becomes easier to accept impermanence. It's not about dismissing your struggles, but realizing that they're just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The view from above helps me see the connections between my experiences, reminding me that every loss, every joy, every moment is part of something bigger. Another practice that's been invaluable is negative visualization. This one took me a while to get comfortable with because it asks you to confront things most of us avoid thinking about. The idea is to actively reflect on the things you value and consider what life would be like without them. At first, it feels unsettling, but what I found is that it doesn't make me anxious. It makes me grateful. When I think about the people I love, the opportunities I have, or even the simple comforts of daily life, negative visualization reminds me not to take them for granted. It's a practice that deepens my appreciation for what I have right now. Instead of living in fear of losing something, I find myself cherishing it more. It's a shift from holding on tightly to holding on lightly, with gratitude instead of fear. Meditation, too, has been a powerful tool for embracing impermanence. I'm not talking about sitting cross-legged for hours. I mean the kind of meditation where you simply sit with your thoughts and observe them. When I take a few minutes each day to focus on my breath and let my thoughts come and go, I'm reminded of how transient everything is. Thoughts appear and disappear, just like emotions, situations, and even people in our lives. This practice has helped me build resilience because it teaches me to let things pass without clinging to them. Another technique I use is what I like to call micro-gratitude. It's about noticing the smallest moments of beauty in everyday life. A warm cup of tea, the sound of rain, or a kind word from someone. When you focus on these fleeting moments, you start to see that impermanence isn't just about loss. It's about the richness of what's here, right now. These little moments don't last forever, and that's exactly what makes them so precious. I also practice journaling as a way to process and embrace change. Every night, I take a few minutes to reflect on the day. What changed, what stayed the same, and how I felt about it. Writing things down helps me see patterns and reminds me that life is always in motion. It's a simple habit, but it's taught me to stay present and accept each day as it comes. The act of writing slows me down and gives me a chance to sit with my thoughts rather than letting them run away with me. Stoic practices also encourage what I like to think of as intentional detachment. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means learning to care deeply without being consumed by attachment. For me, this has been about focusing on effort rather than outcomes. Whether it's a project I'm working on, a relationship I'm nurturing, or a goal I'm striving for, I've learned to pour my energy into the process and let go of the need to control the result. This shift has been liberating because it frees me from the anxiety of trying to make everything turn out a certain way. One more practice I've embraced is preparing for adversity. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, or premeditation of evils. It's about mentally rehearsing challenges before they happen, not to dwell on negativity, but to build resilience. When I take the time to think about what could go wrong and how I might respond, I feel more prepared for whatever comes my way. It's not about living in fear. It's about building confidence in my ability to adapt. Through all these practices, I've realized that embracing impermanence isn't just about dealing with loss, it's about living more fully. When you stop fearing change, you start seeing life for what it really is, a series of fleeting, beautiful moments. You begin to value what you have without clinging to it, and you find the strength to let go when it's time. The beauty of these Stoic techniques is that they're not just theoretical, they're practical tools you can use every day. They've helped me build a life that feels lighter, freer, and more grounded. And the best part is, they're not about changing the world around you, they're about changing the way you see it. As I've embraced practices like the view from above and negative visualization, I've realized something profound. Much of our suffering doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from the need to control what's beyond our reach. This need to have a grip on everything, to shape life into a perfect version of our plans, is like carrying a weight we were never meant to bear. The truth is, no matter how hard we try, there are things in life we simply can't control. Once I stopped fighting this reality and started working with it, everything began to feel lighter. There's a kind of freedom in recognizing what's yours to influence and what isn't. I'll admit, I resisted this idea for a long time. I thought if I just worked harder, planned better, or tried to fix every situation, I could keep everything on track. But life has a way of showing us otherwise. And here's what I've learned. When you stop focusing on the uncontrollable, you free up energy for what really matters. That shift changes everything. One of the most grounding ideas I've found comes from the Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control. It's a simple idea but incredibly powerful. At its core, it teaches that there are two categories in life: the things you can control and the things you cannot. What's in your control? Your actions, your thoughts, your decisions. What's outside your control? Pretty much everything else. Other people's opinions, the outcome of your efforts, the past, the weather, the economy. Once you start sorting life into these two categories, things become much clearer. For me, this practice started small. Whenever I felt overwhelmed, I'd stop and ask myself a single question: is this within my control? If the answer was no, I'd take a deep breath and let it go. I'm not saying it was easy, it wasn't, but with time, it became second nature. I began to focus only on what I could influence, and the rest became background noise. One of the hardest things for me to let go of was other people's opinions. I used to spend so much energy trying to win approval, to make sure everyone liked me, to avoid any hint of criticism. But here's the thing, you can't control how others see you. They'll form their opinions based on their own experiences, biases, and perspectives. Once I accepted this, I stopped chasing validation and started focusing on living in alignment with my own values. That shift brought a sense of peace I didn't know was possible. Another area where the dichotomy of control has helped me is with outcomes. We're so often focused on results, getting the job, achieving the goal, winning the argument, that we forget to pay attention to the process. But the truth is, outcomes are never fully in our hands. What we can control is the effort we put in, the choices we make, and the attitude we bring to the table. Once I started focusing on the process instead of the result, I found myself less anxious and more present. One of the most liberating realizations I've had is that trying to control the uncontrollable is like trying to stop the wind. You can fight it all you want, but it's not going to change. What you can do is adjust your sails. Instead of resisting life, you can work with it, flowing with the currents rather than against them. This doesn't mean giving up. It means being strategic, using your energy wisely, and focusing on what's actually within your power. Letting go of control doesn't mean you stop caring. In fact, it's the opposite. When you release what you can't control, you create space to deeply care about the things that truly matter. For me, this has meant being more present with the people I love, finding joy in the small moments, and putting my energy into projects and goals that align with my purpose. It's not about being indifferent, it's about being intentional. One of the practices that's helped me the most in this journey is mindfulness. When I take the time to really pay attention to the present moment, I notice how often my mind drifts to things I can't control. It's amazing how much of our mental energy gets tied up in worries about the future or regrets about the past. By bringing my focus back to what's happening right now, I'm able to let go of those worries and focus on what I can actually do in the moment. Another key to accepting the uncontrollable is trusting in your ability to adapt. Life is unpredictable, and no amount of planning will change that. But when you trust that you can handle whatever comes your way, you stop needing to control every detail. I've faced plenty of situations where things didn't go as planned, and each time I found a way to adjust. That trust in myself didn't come overnight, but it's grown with every challenge I've faced. It's also important to recognize that letting go of control doesn't mean letting go of responsibility. You still have to show up, make decisions, and do the work. The difference is that you're no longer carrying the weight of things you can't change. You're focusing your energy where it counts, and that makes all the difference. One of the most surprising benefits of this mindset is how it's improved my relationships. When I stopped trying to control how others acted or responded, I started to appreciate them for who they were. I stopped expecting people to fit into my version of how they should be and began meeting them where they were. That shift brought more connection, understanding, and peace into my life. The last thing I want to share is that letting go of control is a practice, not a destination. There are still moments when I catch myself clinging to outcomes or trying to manage things beyond my reach. But each time I come back to the question, is this within my control? And each time I find a little more freedom in letting go of what isn't. This practice has changed how I live, how I think, and how I move through the world. It's not about giving up. It's about stepping into your power, your real power, the kind that comes from focusing on what you can do and releasing the rest. There's a lightness in this approach, a sense of ease that makes life feel less like a battle and more like a dance. And that, to me, is what it means to truly live. Letting go of control has taught me one of life's greatest truths. The present moment is all we really have. It's easy to get caught up in the past or obsess over the future, but the only place where life truly happens is here and now. When I started living with that understanding, something shifted. I began to notice the beauty in things I once overlooked, and felt a deeper connection to the people and experiences that matter most. It wasn't just about letting go, it was about showing up fully and completely for the moments that make life worth living. Recognizing how fleeting life is has made me see every moment differently. It's not about rushing to squeeze the most out of life, but about slowing down enough to notice it. There's a kind of richness in the ordinary that I never appreciated before. For example, a conversation with a friend feels more meaningful when you realize it won't happen in the exact same way again. That cup of coffee in the morning becomes more than a routine. It becomes a moment of quiet joy, a little slice of peace before the day begins. These moments, small as they may seem, are where life happens. When I started focusing on living fully in the present, I noticed that my relationships became deeper. I used to think being physically present was enough, but I've learned that true presence is about more than just showing up. It's about being fully engaged, listening with your whole heart, looking people in the eye, and really hearing what they're saying. It's amazing how much more connected you feel when you're not distracted by your phone or lost in your own thoughts about what's next. Relationships thrive when you give people your undivided attention, even for just a few moments. Living in the present has also taught me the value of gratitude. I used to take so much for granted, rushing through life without stopping to appreciate what I had. But now, I make it a point to pause and say thank you, to myself, to others, to life itself. Gratitude isn't just about feeling good. It's about recognizing the gifts that are already here, even in the midst of challenges. When you're truly present, it becomes easier to see those gifts, and that perspective changes everything. One thing I've realized is that living fully in the present doesn't mean you ignore the future. It means you approach it with a sense of balance. Planning is important, but not at the expense of today. I've spent so much time worrying about things that never happened, missing out on the joy of the moment because I was too focused on what might go wrong. Now I remind myself that the future will come in its own time, and the best way to prepare for it is by living well today. Embracing impermanence has also helped me let go of grudges and past regrets. Holding on to those things used to weigh me down, keeping me stuck in a cycle of resentment and what-ifs. But when you realize that life is fleeting, you start to see how much energy you're wasting on things that no longer matter. I've learned to forgive, not just others, but myself too. It's not about excusing mistakes or forgetting what happened. It's about freeing yourself from the hold those moments have on you, so you can fully embrace what's in front of you. One of the most surprising lessons I've learned is that the present moment has its own kind of wisdom. When you're fully present, you start to notice things you might have missed otherwise. A subtle change in someone's tone, a new perspective on a familiar problem, or even just the way the light hits the trees at sunset. Being present sharpens your awareness and helps you respond to life with more clarity and intention. Living in the present has also shown me the importance of purpose. It's easy to drift through life, going through the motions without really thinking about why you're doing what you're doing. But when you connect with a sense of purpose, Even the smallest actions take on new meaning. For me, it's been about asking myself, what kind of person do I want to be right now, and letting that guide my choices. Purpose isn't some grand, far-off goal. It's something you create moment by moment through the way you show up for yourself and others. Another thing that shifted for me is how I view time. I used to see it as something to manage, a resource to spend wisely or risk wasting. But now I see time as something to experience, not control. Every moment is a chance to be fully alive, to feel, to connect, to grow. It's not about cramming as much as possible into your day, but about savoring the moments you have, no matter how small they might seem. I've also learned to embrace the unpredictability of life. The present moment is never perfect, but it's real. It's where all the messiness, beauty, and possibility of life exist. When you stop trying to make every moment flawless and start accepting it for what it is, you find a kind of peace that perfection could never give you. Life is full of surprises, some joyful, some challenging, but when you're present, you're better equipped to handle whatever comes your way. There's a kind of freedom that comes with living in the present. You stop chasing after things that don't matter, and you start appreciating what's already here. You stop comparing yourself to others and start focusing on your own journey. You stop worrying about what's missing and start celebrating what you have. That shift doesn't just make life better, it makes life feel more alive. Living fully in the present is a practice, not a destination. There are still days when I catch myself drifting into old habits, getting lost in thoughts of the past or worries about the future. But each time, I bring myself back. I take a deep breath, look around, and remind myself, this moment, right here, is enough. It's a lesson I keep learning, and each time, it feels like coming home. When you embrace the fleeting nature of life, you realize that every moment is a gift. It's not about clinging to it, but about experiencing it fully while it's here. That's where joy comes from, not from having more, doing more, or being more, but from being fully present in the life you already have. It's a simple idea, but it's one that has changed everything for me. As we wrap this up, I want you to take a moment to let everything sink in. Life is fleeting, its joys, its challenges, its people, and its moments. But that's not something to fear. It's a truth to embrace, a reminder to live fully, love deeply, and let go gracefully. Impermanence isn't here to rob you, it's here to set you free. To remind you that every loss is a step toward growth, every change a chance to become stronger, and every moment an opportunity to be fully alive. When you accept that you can't control everything, you stop wasting energy on battles you were never meant to fight. When you lean into the present, you uncover the beauty in the ordinary, the wisdom in the everyday, and the joy in simply being here, now. And when you let go of what's not yours to hold, you discover the immense power of focusing on what truly matters. I hope what we've explored together today sticks with you, because it's not just philosophy, it's a way of life, one that's lighter, freer, and filled with more meaning. And remember, this is a journey. Some days it'll feel natural, and others it'll feel like a struggle. But every time you choose to let go of fear and embrace what is, you're moving closer to the life you're meant to live. I'd love to hear from you. What resonated with you the most? Have you already been putting some of these ideas into practice, or are you just starting? Share your thoughts, your experiences, or even your questions in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspective might just inspire someone else. And if you're new here or just passing through, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There's so much more to explore together, and I'd love for you to be part of this journey as we dive deeper into topics that truly matter. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Remember, life is always moving, always changing, but so are you. Keep growing, keep letting go, and keep living fully. I'll see you next time.